Well, to take this discussion further, I'm joined now in studio by SABC's Deputy Sports Editor, Janet Whitton. Janet, thanks very much for coming in. So let's start with this. What are the main aspects of this story? Because, 580 positive tests uncovered or covered up across 30 different sports in the build-up to 2014 Sochi Games and the Games in London in 2012.
I think that in the initial reports, when the Russian state-sponsored doping was uncovered by the IAAF, well, when the athletes, the track and field athletes, were found to have doped, I think this phrase "state-sponsored doping," nobody really knew what that meant.
Yeah.
I think the McLaren report has actually put that on the table, and it's like reading a James Bond novel when you look at what actually happened. The FSB, the former KGB, was involved in finding ways to open the samples so that it couldn't be seen that they'd been tampered with. It's absolutely extraordinary. And McLaren came up with this phrase, the disappearing positive methodology, which just shows you how formulated it actually was. There was a system in place that allowed these positive dope tests to either disappear. Every now and again, some of them would go through, and there were some positives, so that it didn't look like it was too suspicious. Absolutely. And any foreign samples that went through, there's actually an email that stipulates that any foreign samples must go through and be publicized if they did test positive. It's absolutely the most extraordinary reading.
So, having said that, obviously the athletes are the most affected by this. Did they then know that they were involved in this, or was it, something that they were unwillingly now a part of?
That's not clear at the moment, and certainly, if you look back at the history of doping, certainly in the former East Germany, that's state-sponsored. That's the last time there was state-sponsored doping on what seems to be this level, and a lot of the athletes then actually didn't know what they were being put through. Here, I'm not so sure it's quite as bad as that, and I don't think that the athletes are quite as much victims as they were certainly in the 70s and early 80s. But I can't believe that so many Russian athletes didn't know more or less what was going on and didn't know that they would be protected. Whether they knew exactly what they were taking or not is not clear, but it seems to be fairly obvious that they knew they would be protected if they did happen to fail a test.
And what kind of response or what kind of actions will take place now?
Something's got to happen soon. Obviously, we're 2 weeks away from the Rio Olympic Games, and the IOC now has to take steps. The IAAF obviously took steps to ban the Russian athlete. Only one Russian athlete has actually passed the rather strict criteria that they set in place. The weightlifters are banned. There's a Russian rowing team that's already been kicked out for positive tests. But now they have to look at this growing call, and it's becoming almost universal from athletes from other countries, that Russia as a country needs to be kicked out of the Olympics. That's obviously the most drastic thing that the IOC can do. Do they have the backbone to do that? I'm not sure that they do. But if they don't do that, what other steps can they put in place? It's too late for all of those Russian athletes to be retested. None of them have a doping passport that's believable. So short of kicking them out of the Olympics and taking that stand, I think the IOC needs to do something drastic.
And does this now set a precedent for sports and sporting codes in the future? Will there be more drastic measures to look into doping in sports?
I think what's happened in the last year with what's happened here is that the federations need to take more responsibility. WADA is an independent organization, and the IOC always said it was very important that WADA was independent. But they just simply don't have the resources to police what seems to be happening at the moment all around the world. And make no mistake, Russia isn't alone in having athletes that are doping. It might be alone in the kind of state sponsorship and the state involvement and the political involvement in doping, but there's doping all over the world in every sport, and WADA simply doesn't have the resources to do that. And I think the individual federations, sporting federations, and the countries themselves need to take more responsibility, because I think these things are going to get uncovered. But it's forever and ever. The people who are trying to catch the cheats are always a step behind the people who are trying to help those who are cheating.
Janet, thank you very much. Our SABC Deputy Sports Editor, Janet Whitton, with